This video is brought to you by Straight Goods News, Canada's alternative online news source. Visit straightgoods.ca.
Sustaining jobs and prosperity for Canadians. This is why our government is taking action to ensure continued rail service for Canadian businesses, families, and the economy. We'll now hear from Minister Ritz.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. The livelihood of Canadian farm families depends on uninterrupted, timely and efficient rail service. Canadian grain farmers have sales orders to fill around the globe and are heavily dependent on the railways to move that product to market. Across Canada, many producers and processors export 50 to 85% of their production. Our farmers ship 65% of their soybeans, 70% of their wheat, and over 80% of their canola and pulses beyond Canadian borders. Last year, Canada reached a new record of exporting some $44 billion in agriculture, food and seafood. Canada's world-class grain industry brings $16 billion to the farm gate. Overall, the agricultural industry contributes $130 billion to our national economy. Jobs and growth depend on these exports. The agriculture industry creates 1 out of every 8 jobs in Canada. That means 2.2 million people are employed by this industry. Simply put, we can't afford to have that at risk. Across this vast country and well beyond our borders, consumers continue to demand high-quality, safe foodstuffs. As the global population rises, Canadian farmers will need reliable, affordable transportation more than ever. Our government understands that agriculture is the foundation of rural Canada and a significant part of our history and our way of life. All the while, Mr. Goodale continues to play politics with rail, conveniently forgetting that it was his Liberal government that never did a rail freight review. Mr. Goodale, the time for talk is over. If the Liberals want at least to appear to be concerned about farmers and the economy, they will support our government actions today. Canadians can be proud they have a government who's acting on our rail review and making sure our economy is not jeopardized by risky union tactics. There's an expression, the world waits for no one. Rail service disruption can and will damage the reputation of our agricultural exporters. Even though Canadian quality is top-notch, it won't matter if our buyers can't count on deliveries. They will move on to other suppliers. We don't want our customers to think twice about buying Canadian product. We need predictable, secure transportation for the sake of our economy and the prosperity of our farmers. In conclusion, that's why our government is taking action to ensure continued rail services for Canadian businesses, farm families and the overall economy. Thank you. Now, Minister Raitt.
Thanks, Gerry. Thank you, everyone. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see from the ministers who have talked about their own portfolios, our government is really concerned that a disruption at Canadian Pacific will damage Canada's fragile economic recovery. Now, the impact of this work stoppage to the Canadian economy is estimated to be more than $500 million a week, and it puts tens of thousands of jobs of Canadians at risk if it is prolonged. So that's why today I am tabling in the House a bill entitled the Resumption of Rail Services Act. But we're also doing one other thing. We're asking the opposition party, the leader of the opposition, to stop putting big union interests ahead of the Canadian public and ahead of our economic recovery. We want the opposition to put the public interest in the Canadian economy first, and we want them to join our government to ensure that Canadians can get back to work. Our government is standing up for Canada's economic recovery and for passengers in all regions by intervening to ensure continued rail services and in some cases the resumption. And by passing this back-to-work legislation immediately and not stopping until the legislation passes, we will protect Canadian businesses and the public interest and the further repercussions of a prolonged strike. Canadians gave our Conservative government a mandate to focus on the economy, and by sitting until this legislation passes, we will do just that. We're happy to, I think Minister Lebel also has comments en français.
The Parliament, how soon do you expect it to pass the House and the Senate?
Well, as you can see that we put on notice today a procedural motion in order to guide what the debate will be. We're starting today at 3 o'clock. From past precedent, we'd like to see CP Rail continuing to roll on Thursday. But we'd like it sooner, quite frankly, and that's the message today. The NDP have in the past agreed to quick passage in 1995 when we got to a prolonged strike of 7 days. We are on day 6 of a strike. We take this very, very seriously, and it's time to move this matter through.
Minister Raitt, lots of numbers being thrown around. I'm going to give you some others. Last year, Canadian Pacific made $570 million. We have a New York fund come in and say they're not profitable enough, and the first thing that's happening is the company's asking for pension money back from workers. Can you explain how that back-to-work legislation helps the workers who are being squeezed in this sense?
I can't talk to the legislation, but I can tell you the legislation does two things. One, it puts people back to work, which is what we need for the greater economic benefit of Canada. And two, it provides a process to the parties at the table to come to their own conclusions. You can talk to me later about what the content of the legislation is after 3 o'clock when we table it. Before then, I can't speak to it at all.
What do you say to critics who say you're actually working for a New York hedge fund and not working for employees?
Well, that's absolutely ridiculous. I work for the Canadian public and the national economy.